Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivraj Acharya Dutta Sata Shri Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Shri Prabhupada Ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava Ki, Shri Jahnava Mata Avirbhav Mahotsav Ki, Shri Sita Devi Avirbhav Mahotsav Ki, Shri Madhu Pandita Avirbhav Mahotsav Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi, all glorious to Samadhavas, all glorious to Shri Guru and Garanga, all glorious to Shri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminti Namane, Namaste Saraswate Devi, Gauravani Pacharine, Nivasesha Sanyavadi Pastachari Shatani. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text number 9? 10 and 11. Yeah. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 16, text number 10 and 11. Kindly repeat. Api, Sarve, Kushalinas Tava Putra Manasvini Lakshaye Asvatam Atmanam Bhavatya Lakshanai Aham Api Sarve Kushalinas Tava Putra Manasvini Lakshaye Svastam Atmanam Bhavatya Lakshanairaham Api Sarve Kushalinas Tava Putra Manisvani Lakshaye Swastam Atmanam Bhavatya Lakshanairaham Api Sarve Kushalinas Tava Putra Manasvini Lakshaye Swastam Atmanam Bhavatya Lakshanairaham Tava Putra Manasvini Lakshaye Swastam Atmanam Bhavatya Lakshanairaham Api Sarve Kushalinas Tava Putra Manasvini Lakshaye Swastam Atmanam Bhavatya Lakshanairaham Tava Putra Manasvini Lakshaye Swastam Atmanam Bhavatya Lakshanairaham. Ladies. Api Sarve Kushalinas Manasvini Api, weather. Sarve, all. Kushalinaha, in full auspiciousness. Tava, your. Putraha, sons. Manasvini, a great-minded lady. Lakshaye, I see. Asvastam, not in tranquility. Atmanam, the mind. Bhavatyaha, of you. Lakshanai, by symptoms. Aham, I. O great-minded lady, are all your sons faring well? Seeing your withered face, I can perceive that your mind is not tranquil. How is this so? As they say, the face is the index of the mind. Just like in a book you have an index which is supposed to inform you what the contents are. The mind is sometimes said to be like an index book. You can look at a person's face. People may be a little bit more expert at hiding their inner intentions, but oftentimes you can tell, especially when there are personal emotions which are getting the better of us. So here we have Aditi. She's very naturally very morose and disturbed because her sons are, as we've been hearing, they've been removed from their post. They're in a kind of exile, I guess you could say, hiding away somewhere. And naturally the mother feels the pain of all the sons, all the children. It's only natural. So Kashyapa Muni is addressing her. Oh, what's wrong? Your mind is not tranquil. Are your sons not doing well? Sometimes mothers, they worry a lot when their children are not doing well at school. Misbehaving and not studying, or they're not getting a job. They're just sitting at home doing nothing. Or they disappear altogether. They don't know where they are. That's even worse. So what is the reason for this? And now we're going to hear from Aditi herself, right from the horse's mouth. Shri Aditi Uvacha Bhadrang Dvija Gavang Brahman Dharmasyasya Janasya Cha Trivargasya Parang Kshetrang Grihamedin Griha Ime. So Aditi said, "O my respected Brahmana husband, all is well with the Brahmins, the cows, religion, and the welfare of other people. O master of the house, the three principles of Dharma, Artha, and Kama flourish in household life, which is consequently full of good fortune." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In household life, one can develop the three principles of religion: economic development and sense gratification of religion, economic development and sense gratification according to the regulations given in the Shastras. But to attain liberation, one must give up household life and place himself in the transcendental renounced order. Kashyapa Muni was not in the renounced order of life. Therefore he is addressed here once as Brahman and another time as Griha maiden. Aditi, his wife, assured him that as far as household life was concerned, everything was going nicely, and the Brahmins and cows were being honored and protected. In other words, there were no disturbances. Household life was duly progressing. Of course, there were extended disturbances, one could say, but in terms of performance of one's household duties, things were going on nicely. In the Vedic system, mostly the Vedas, Krishna says, Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. The Vedic literatures deal mostly with the what? Three modes of material nature. And what should you do, Arjuna? Apply the Vedas in your life and enjoy the three modes of nature. Or rise above them. Okay. Not indulge in the enjoying the fruits of the Vedic literature. The fruits of the Vedas. Of course, the ultimate fruit of the Veda is liberation and ultimately love of God, but generally speaking, people follow, or whatever the Vedic literatures to whatever degree, not necessarily talking today, but in general, they follow the Vedas what for? Sense gratification, elevation to the heavenly planets, or some material reason. They worship the demigods usually also. I mean, we're talking of pious people here, by the way, civilized human beings. What do they worship the demigods for? Money, material things, wealth, health, money, wife, husband, give it whatever you think. I remember one time in England, some of you have heard of a city called Leicester. Leicester, quite a big city, something like Tours. And anyway, there was one Indian man there. He was like one of our congregational members. but he was a little materialistic, and he fell in love with the most beautiful girl in the Indian community, but she was not very interested in him. So he went to the local priest of the Hindu temple, because the devotees weren't exactly encouraging. And he went to the Hindu priest and asked what to do, and the Hindu priest gave him all these yagyas to perform to Uma and this thing and that thing. And he was determined to get the goal of his life, you know. And by the arrangement of higher forces, he was blessed, and he actually got her as his wife. It was amazing. And he was in ecstasy for about 2 days. She was an extremely good-looking lady. And sometimes, and not always, but sometimes, good-looking ladies know how to take advantage of their, you could say, they're not so qualified husbands, in a sense. So she had him working round the clock for everything under the sun that she wanted, you know. He was working 2 jobs just to keep up with all the, you know, expenses that were required. And she would threaten him that she'll leave him if he doesn't do what she needs. And in this way, and the other interesting feature was that the priest told him he had to carry on with the yagyas, which he'd already been performing, which took at least 2 or 3 hours a day. So he was sleeping about 3 hours, working like an ass around the clock, and he never had any time to enjoy his beautiful wife, practically speaking, at all. His life, he came and said, I could never imagine being so miserable as I am now. I don't know what happened to him eventually. I only know up to that point he was so miserable. I'm sure it didn't last, at least that relationship. We work hard for these things, and it's like children, huh? Everything's taken away from us. And as Prabhupada says here, this life of Griya Maiden, where religion is a process to facilitate our material needs, usually more than required. If followed properly, however, one is considered to be, you could say, pious, behaving in a pious way, free one from sinful reactions and so on, if done properly. Even if we do have a material motivation in due course of time, one may come to one's senses. But generally speaking, improper worship, improper following of the Vedas, and ill motives, etc., do not result in a very high or a very great benefit. But aside from that, there's still, Krishna says, rise above them, Arjuna, and as Prabhupada says here, and that Kashyap Muni was not in a renounced order of life. One can be in a renounced order of life as a grihasta. Nashrita karma palam karyam karma karoti yasa sannyasi chayogi cha no niragmina chakriyaha. If one is not attached, one performs one household duties, and maybe certain things like yagyas and so on may have to socially be performed, but one is not attached to the fruits of the work. As such, one's attached to one's duty, but not necessarily the fruits of the work. You need a small knife for this. Haven't you got any small knives? You've got a knife there for cutting pumpkins. You're cutting like string beans. The eggplant, okay, but string beans, you know. You're using a pumpkin knife to cut string beans. There you go, that's a bit better. I don't know if that's any better. Yeah. Anyway, whatever you feel comfortable with, no problem. That one's contaminated by potatoes. Whatever, but it's nice to have a few small knives when you're cutting little vegetables. Much safer and more efficient. I have 50 years of cutting vegetable experience. Anyway, back to the point that, yes, so religious principles, one can be attached to one's duty, but one can be renounced in the grihastha life by not being attached to name, fame, wealth, and so on and so forth. One's attached to following one's duty according to the Varna ashram system, etc. But one is attached to Krishna, doing what one's doing for the pleasure of Krishna, not one's own pleasure. but a family life, raising children for the pleasure of Krishna, etc. So today is a very special day on our calendar. Today is the appearance day of Sita Devi, the eternal consort of Lord Ramchandra. And we heard a bit about her a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, on Ram Navami. And there's lots to be said, but we're not going to say much today for various reasons. We said some things a little bit a few weeks ago, maybe, I don't know. But basically it's her appearance day, so her appearance is very unique. I don't know I don't know if Jaladuta, I don't know, he still plows the land, I think, with the bulls. But I don't think he's had any experience like this one as of. It would be nice if he did, huh? We'd probably be more interested in the gold casket than we would be what's inside it, though. So anyway, long time ago in Treta Yuga, King Janak, or the king, Janak sometimes is the name of the presiding king, but Janak Maharaj, as he's known, was a very pious king, extremely pious. But somehow or another, as by the will of Providence sometimes, there's disturbances in the state. The case of drought sometimes, or some problems are there. So they usually perform yagyas to Vishnu, yagya vai Vishnu, yagyatat kamanantya lokayam karma bandhanaha, that sacrifices should be done for the pleasure of Vishnu. So he performed with the Brahmins some worship, various yagyas, etc., to bring auspiciousness in the state. So they performed the yagya all well and good, and then part of the yagya was he had to plow the land, because the land wasn't producing. So he had to plow the land, and as he plowed the land, at this time actually Janaka had no children, so but he plowed the field and with a plow, and suddenly, as he plowed the field, the tip of the plow hit something, and he looked, and there was this golden casket in the ground as he dug up. And he said, wow, this is amazing, a golden casket box in the ground. And he took up the golden box, opened it, and lo and behold, inside the golden box, what did he find? He found a beautiful, inconceivably beautiful little baby girl. And he was astonished. He took this as the will of the Lord and accepted that child as his own daughter. Took the child back. They gave the name Sita. Sita means literally the tip of a plow. This is the word Sita. It's the tip at the end of the plow. It's called Sita. So he gave her the name Sita because the tip of the plow had touched the box, And she was extremely qualified, beautiful child. He accepted that child as his own daughter, because she's none other than the eternal goddess of fortune, consort of Lord Ramchandra, who appeared in this way, and we heard that story a few weeks ago in relationship to Ravan. So anyway, there she was. And then he had another daughter, Urmila, and as you know, later on, they were both given in marriage to Lord Ramchandra and Lakshman. Sita to Ram and Urmila to Lakshman. And also, Janak Maharaj had given this his first daughter Sita. This famous story, how the test which Janak had given to any man who could perform this great feat was a worthy candidate to be her husband. That man had to be able to pick up the bow. The dynasty in Ayodhya had inherited this special bow of Lord Shiva, which he'd killed. Was it Tripasura? What's his name? Anyway, one demon had been killed with this bow, and this bow was in the custody of Janak Maharaj. So this bow was very big, very strong, very powerful. No man could lift it. What is practically speaking? Move it, but hardly lift it. They could hardly Like, weight. You see these weightlifters sometimes. Like that, people were trying to pick up the bow, they couldn't do it, Sometimes they did, but they couldn't string it. And no one was capable. So, but how did that come about? Well, one day Janak Maharaj was shocked to see his little daughter, Sita. There are different stories, but the usual one we hear is she would be cleaning around the bow, and in order to clean under the bow, one day she just picked the bow up like it was a feather and put it back down again. Wow. So then he made this as the what do you say, the test for anyone who wanted. You have to qualify to marry this girl. She's obviously not an ordinary child. Imagine if your little daughter, I don't know how old she was at that time, but she wasn't very old. It's like we were at Bhagavati, is she here now? And Manju Ali's house, she asked today, and there's an enormous concrete upside down bathtub amongst much. I think everyone dumps all their rubbish around their house. All their trash is just like, I want to get everyone out there one day and clean the whole place up. It's like they can't do anything. This is a complete cement trough. It must weigh a few hundred kilos. It's stuck there. It's like, if your little daughter would go there one day, she's 5-year-old, and she just picks that trough up like a feather and just like tosses it over the trees into the Akui dump or wherever it is. Oh my God. Everyone would be astonished, So they were astonished. So when Lord Ram, of course, came with Vishwamitra and Lakshman and so on, then he easily picked up the bow and cracked the bow, very easily, boom. As he pulled it back, it just snapped in two. And that's that's life. And Sita went through, as you know, throughout her life, she went through many trials and tribulations. This world is full of trials and tribulations, as Bhakti Siddhanta would always say. It's always, it's the constitution of this world, by the way. We spend most of our time trying to fight against material constitution. This world is Dukkalayam Shashvatam, is a place of turmoil and annoyance. You can't take its constitutional nature away. We're meant to rise above it, but most people, they're always trying to work to counteract it. Of course, Sita taught us that taking shelter of the Lord is the goal of life, no matter what comes along. Anyway, so many stories, we did some of them a few weeks ago. It's also today the appearance day of, who else? Jahnava? Jahnava Mata, the eternal consort, also very interesting, the eternal consort of Lord Nityananda. As in Lord Nityananda is a form of? Huh?
He is the Adiguru.
Yes, a form of, he's Adiguru, you could say that also, yes. But I mean, in terms of Krishna Lila, who is he? Balaram. They're both eternal. You can't say one comes from the other. They're the same person in two different forms, manifesting different Leelas. So it's not like any Nityananda is any less or Balaram's any less. They're the same personality. Just like we also sometimes, for different reasons, you may behave differently, take on different, perhaps a man may be working in a position as a lawyer or as a judge, let's say, and in a very big position. When he goes home, he's the same person, but he's not a judge at home. He gets home and sees his little son or something has just, broken something, and that's not yours. I'm going to have to now make a court case against you and try you. Found guilty of breaking cups which didn't belong to him. This 3-year-old child is sentenced to 1 year in jail. No, he's totally different mood, and just a different mood and a different behavior and a different dress. Everything's different. He doesn't go home. He was in the court. Everyone's saying your honor. Everyone's like bowing down to the head judge, right? And whatever the judge says, that's it. Final word. and everyone respects the judge. And when he goes home, it's different. The wife says to him, "Where the heck have you been, you nonsense? Your dinner's been in the oven for 2 hours and it's, dried out," or whatever it is. Why you never spend time with me? She get on his case. Completely different mood. So the Lord also manifests different moods for different purposes, for different pleasure pastimes, etc. So Nityananda is Avadut, as we heard. He's unpredictable. He's Adi Guru. He's most merciful personality of Godhead. You could go on many, many different aspects of Lord Nityananda. It's not that Lord Balaram doesn't have them with him, but he doesn't manifest them in the same way. So Lord Nityananda, Avadut, you don't know whether he's a sannyasi, whether he's a grihastha, a brahmachari, or a vanaprastha, or nothing at all. He's beyond it all. Huh? He behaves in unbecoming ways, in strange situations. He's the most unpredictable form of the Lord. So anyway, so be it. After being sent to Bengal by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to preach in Bengal, the Sankirtan movement, in Bengal, amongst all kinds of personalities, I think it would be very attractive. It'd be wonderful if Nityananda Prabhu would only come to France. He'd have so much ecstasy in France. Everywhere in France. There are 1 or 2 Jagais and Madhais here in France, and there are many beaches where he could definitely get away with doing some of his avadut pastimes. Right? Some islands or something. Just all he would wear would be his cloth on his head, nothing else. Anyway, we have to follow in the footsteps. Not that part. We don't imitate that part, but you might get in the news if you did. But it may not be the best way of spreading Krishna consciousness. But we try to follow in his mood of doing the business of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of spreading the holy name and distributing Krishna consciousness. So Lord Nityananda going everywhere, sent by Lord Chaitanya to Bengal to preach, going here and there. So many dacoits were being delivered and various other entities were being delivered by the mercy of Nityananda. And, for his own reasons, of course, he has his own pastimes, purposes. There's one Brahmin, don't ask me the names of the places, I can't remember. There's one Brahmin, Suryadas Sarakela, who was... he had 2 daughters, very qualified, beautiful young daughters. He got the name Sarakela because he was an accountant. He was an accountant. If you know accountant, he'd keep the accounts for the king. King's accountant. So I guess he was some kind of Vaishya, I don't know what they call it, Kayastha or something like that. Something along those lines, maybe a Kayastha or something. But he had these 2 beautiful daughters, and they were just reaching marriageable age. They were almost 40 years old. Today it's 40. I don't know. Times have changed, but traditionally, girls particularly, had to be married before puberty. So they were approaching that moment, and he thought, I got to try to get my daughters married. I don't know if they were twins, maybe not. I don't know. Somebody may know. Anyway. They were coming to marriageable age anyway, and he thought, now's the time. What to do? I've got to find a qualified husbands for my daughters, the 2 girls. So he that night he had a dream, and in that night he suddenly found himself taking his 2 daughters and offering them to Lord Nityananda. He knew Lord Nityananda. He was the brother of. Brother of Gauridas Pandit, I think. Something like that. And anyways, we know all about Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. So he had a dream. He was going there to offer his daughters to Lord Nityananda. And then suddenly, Lord Nityananda suddenly turned into Lord Balaram. And his daughters turned into... Huh? Pardon? Revati and
Varuni.
Varuni. Varuni turned into these two eternal consorts of Lord Nityananda, of Lord Balaram rather. So he had this dream and he woke up, he was in ecstasy. Ecstasy. Whoa, how fortunate. Of course it hadn't happened, literally speaking, but he was... People had probably a little bit more purity and faith in those days, and he went to some local Brahmins, and the local Brahmin, obviously a very qualified Brahmin, explained the whole situation. The Brahmin was, said he took it up on his behalf, and he went to the house of Shri Madhu Pandita, and it so happened that Lord Nityananda was there at the house of Shri Madhu Pandita. And arrangements were made. Lord Nityananda was into it, and away they went. Marriage was held, big pompous, grand festival was held. Some rich disciple of Nityananda arranged everything for the marriage. He married both the daughters of Surdas, Jahnava and Vasudha. And they lived together in Kadaha for some time. But Nityananda was always on the move, he was quite restless, always going here and there. Traveling Sankirtan devotees are like that, And they can't keep them tied down for long. But he had two children of Vasudha, not from Jahnava. Jahnava was generally considered to be the senior of the two, but he had two children named Birabhadra or Virchandra, and Ganga Dasi Devi. Later on became Goswamini. There we go. Ganga Goswamini. And she was an Acharya, a guru amongst the Vaishnavas, very qualified. As was Jahnava, of course. Jahnava she's the Shakti of Lord Nityananda. I wrote a letter yesterday and I mentioned, I don't know if it's bona fide, but I said, she's the mother of devotional service, as Lord Nityananda is the guru. She's like the mother of the devotees. Which is traditional. So she's the mother of bhakti. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur, in one prayer, he says how he considers himself to be the lowest, most fallen, helpless, useless, wretched creature. And then he falls at Jahnava's feet, not physically, but in his heart, and begs, "You are my only hope, my only shelter." He addresses her also as the guru because she's non-different than Lord Nityananda in one sense. We gave the other day the name Govinda, what was that name again? Rupini, right? Govinda Rupini. It has another derivative or meaning, is that in one sense you're like the same body as Govinda, the consort of Govinda. Like that. So, name of Radharani. And Nityananda, the same thing, she's like that Rupini of Nityananda. And anyway, so he begged her for her shelter, said, "You are my only hope." Most merciful Prabhupada also said, Radharani, if you pray to Krishna, but Radharani is much more merciful than Krishna. We pray to Radha. So like that, Jahnava was is most merciful, still is most merciful. And she stayed there. And actually she spent a lot of time looking after, training the children of Vasudha in devotional service. And later on, of course, when they grew up, Virchandra is another incarnation of Godhead. He's an expansion of Kshirodakshari Vishnu is an expansion of Virchandra, or Virabhadra. And Ganga, I guess she's Ganga, I don't know, probably Ganga Devi. So these children were not ordinary children either. They became great acharyas after Nityananda's departure. Jahnava stayed on after Nityananda's departure from the world, and she traveled quite a lot. Of course, we heard a few weeks before Kamnomi about Narottam Das Thakur's Keturi festival, and she was the head VIP. She was proceeding over the whole events there. and installing the deities, bringing unity amongst the Vaishnavas. She loved to cook. She would go here, where she would go, she would like cook. She was an amazing cook, just like Radharani, amazing cook, incredible cook. Oh, it's interesting thing about Suryadas, he's also said to be none other than King Revata, the father of Revati. So he again appears to be the father of Jahnava. So these are eternal associates of the Lord. They're not just ordinary, not to say anyone devotee is an ordinary devotee, but they're not Jiv Tattva. They're eternal associates of the Lord, internal Shakti Tattvas or expansions of the Lord who appear in various ways in his various expansions to assist the Lord in his pastimes. So they're not conditioned. They're Nityasiddhas, eternal associates of the Lord. And by hearing about them associating with these past personalities, we can also become free of the conditioning, of Nityabada conditioning, and come to the same, we could say, level of consciousness, not the same, not that we can be those persons, but the mood of those persons, and enter into their state of Nityasiddha, eternally, properly situated, permanently situated. So anyway, she traveled a lot, not just to Kaituri. She also went to Vrindavan, and there in Vrindavan she met the Goswamis and began the consort of Nityananda. They were all ecstasy. She stayed at Radhakund for some time. If you go to Radhakund, you can see her Shripat there, where she used to perform her bhajan on the banks of Radhakund, and the little stairwell where she to go down to take her bath in Radhakund. And one time when she was taking her bath, she felt a little black hand came out of the water and grabbed her sari. Come. And then disappeared. But then she heard the voice that, I will appear again and you will worship me when you go back to Bengal and you take baths in the Ganga. So she got this indication. And anyway, when she went back to Bengal one day when she was bathing in the Ganga, sure enough, somehow or another, something touched her body, and there he was. There was Gopinath, deity of Gopinath, and she worshipped that deity of Gopinath, of Lord Gopinath, as a worshipable deity. And when she went back to Bengal, by that time, of course, her own consort, her own husband rather, Nityananda, had already departed, but others had departed too. So many, Sachimata had departed, Srivas Thakur departed, Advaita, they'd all gone. They'd all the main, they say big guns, I don't know if you use this term, big guns, all the big guns had gone. Of course her son was there, or her stepson, Bir Chandra, he became the next big gun. And there were others around, of course. So she visited all these places, and they were not there. Srivas Thakur had gone, Malini had gone, Sachi Devi had gone, Advaita had gone, Sita had gone. They'd all disappeared or manifested their pastime, so she was very overwhelmed in separation from these great souls. But she would stay in the place, like in Sachimata's house when she got there. Ishan was there, but he was extremely old, getting very old, and the house otherwise was empty. And then when she went to Ekachakra, the birthplace of her husband, Lord Nityananda, again she went to the house. Nityananda had gone, Adai Pandit had long gone, and everyone else had gone, and all the original associates. So feeling great separation, but she stayed there chanting, cooked a big feast for everybody, and she would love serving prasadam, just like our Paramgati Prabhu, every day at lunchtime, right? Every day, more or less, every day. Serve prasadam, it's a great service, serving prasadam, cooking. Jahnava, you want the mercy of Jahnava? We have Jahnava from living in Tour here, but the Jahnava Ma, the eternal consort of Lord Nityananda, she loved cooking. So cook very nicely and meditate on Jahnava. The same like meditating on Shrimati Radharani or Sita Devi. They're all expert at everything, but particularly in cooking. Cooking is a big business in the spiritual realm. There's plenty of room there for caterers and for cooks, and pot cleaners and vegetable cutters, etc. There's no shortage of opportunities there. Of course, it can happen spontaneously also by the will of the Lord. But for the sake of loving exchanges, all these activities are going on, and serving prasadam. What a service, serving prasadam. Such a wonderful service. Such a wonderful service. It's interesting that Jahnava worshipped Gopinath because today is the disappearance day of Madhu Pandita, one of the associates of the Lord in Gaur Lila. Not much is said about Madhu Pandita, really speaking. I don't remember much about him, to be honest. All I remember of Madhu Pandita is that he has his samadhi in Vrindavan, just behind the temple of Gopinath, Radha Gopinath. He was worshipping Gopinath. So it's interesting also that Jahnava was also worshipping Gopinath, different deity. You go there now to Vrindavan, you'll see the temple there of Radha Gopinath. It's very quiet amongst the temples of the Goswamis, perhaps the quietest, Radha Gopinath Mandir, maybe. Yeah, it's a big temple, very big courtyard. It's really nice. I really like that Gopinath temple. It's got a very special atmosphere, extremely special, especially if you go in the afternoon when the temple deity is locked. There's no one around. It's really quiet, and there's usually big courtyard, beautiful Rasa Leela on the wall, paintings, and it's old, it needs to be doing, but it's very beautiful, and it's a very sublime place. Madhu Pandita was the... Pardon? Clean? It's cleaner now. I've seen it over 45 years. Definitely cleaner now. Yeah. Maybe they got a little bit more money now because Western devotees have started filling up the donation box over the last 45 years. But it was like a temple that was almost ignored. It was a bit behind the scenes there for a while. But it's come forward nicely. Anyway, Madhu Pandita was the one who established that temple and deity worship there. More than that, I don't know very much about him. Not much is said as far as I know. There's a little bit in Chaitanya Charitamrita about, he was, I believe, was he a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit? I think he was. Anyway, that's life. Jahnava Mata, what a great soul. We can pray to her today for her mercy that we could also become instruments in the service of Nityananda, strength to carry on despite all challenges and difficulties that we face or we think we face due to our conditional nature, and that she may show her mercy upon us and purify. Same with Sita Devi, went through so many trials and tribulations in her life. Was a disciple. Okay, thank you for that. I had that memory. I thought he was. Okay. Well, what's the time? It's 9 o'clock almost. Okay. Any comments or questions? When is Ekadashi? I got a question. When is Ekadashi?
Sunday.
Pardon? Sunday. Okay. It's Mahadwadashi or Dostu? Mahadwadashi. Oh, that's very special. Anything else happening on that day? Rukmini Devi's appearance. Pardon? Oh, huge festival. Well, that's a good point because I talked to Pandapur yesterday, senior devotee there, and they're all in lockdown. Ekalavya, he hasn't been outside the building in a month. He walked out the door once just to see the sun. They're all in lockdown there. What to do? They're quite anyway, for various reasons. So I don't know if it will be a big festival or not. I mean, you can't stop people in India. Nothing stops the flow when it's time to go. Right? They have you're right, they'll have a big festival in Pandapur tomorrow on Sunday. You're right. Lockdown or no lockdown.
May I say something
Ye-
about Keturi?
Yeah.
Dhananda Swami mentions there for Keturi. Acting was under the guidance of Shrimati Devi. She asked Gautama Das Thakur,
Yeah. Yeah, she presided over the whole festival. It's the first Gorpunim. Krishnaratam, he envisioned and, let's say, architect, I don't know what's the word, developed with his cousin Santosh, who was also his disciple, who was very rich, who organized this first festival. They invited all the devotees, and particularly Jahnava, because she, after the departure of Lord Nityananda and all the other great souls, which we already mentioned, she was like the senior and most respected. So she also, at that great festival, not only did she install 6 sets of deities, but she also cooked the huge offerings for the deities, feasts for the devotees, and personally served it at the festival. Now the purpose of that festival, and it's the purpose of Jahnava, you could say in a sense, was to bring unity even after maybe 30 years, after 20, 30, who knows, there's no exact date given to it, but some years after the departure of Lord Chaitanya, many branches of Gaudiya Vaishnava had sprung up in different parts of India, and there was many, deviations even, or false understandings had developed in different areas. So one of the main purposes of this festival was to bring all the Vaishnavas together and establish a unified understanding or unified direction for everyone to understand the real essence of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. So she established that also at this great festival in Keturi. Amongst many devotees were there. Thousands upon thousands of devotees came. And it was a unifying festival as well as a ecstatic festival. And it said that due to the dancing of due to the singing of Narottam Das Thakur, whose singing and his musical talents were so pure, they weren't just expert, but they were completely pure, that Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and all the departed devotees all manifested again there in the Keturi festivals, that they were personally present there, dancing in the middle of the kirtans, which would go on and on, day and night, practically speaking. Ecstatic kirtans. So, yes, Jahnava. And she had disciples, and Bir Chandra also had many disciples. Her stepson, interesting thing, I noted one time, her son, or stepson, Bir Chandra, he had many disciples, and he married 2 of the daughters of one of his disciples. Quite unusual, huh? He married 2. One of his disciples had 2 daughters, I'm sure many of them did, and he married their 2 daughters. They were like his grandchildren. These transcendental things would go on. Obviously eternal relationships there. You can't imitate that. And Ganga Goswamini, she also had many disciples. Govardhan preached. Jai Shri Jahnava Ma Ki Jai. The appearance day of Shri Jahnava Ma Ki Jai. The appearance day of Sita Devi Ki Jai. The disappearance day of Tirobha Mahotsav of Madhu Pandita Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Radha Gopinath Ki Jai. Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Go Premanandi.